You know that feeling, right? You're on a project, you've got this beautiful, super detailed plan, and the second it makes contact with the real world, it just completely falls apart. We've all been there. Well, today we're going to dive into exactly why that happens and how modern project management has shifted from those rigid, perfect plans to flexible strategies that can actually adapt and succeed. Let's get into it.
Here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with that classic perfect plan approach to see where it comes from. Then we'll look at its breaking point. What happens when reality hits? After that, we'll unpack the Agile alternative, see it in action with a framework called Scrum, and then we'll wrap up with a skill that's absolutely vital no matter how you work, managing risk.
All right, first up, let's set our baseline. We're talking about the traditional way of doing things, which for a long time was seen as the only way to manage a project.
Okay, before we go any further, let's get on the same page with one key term, project. A project is a temporary effort to create something unique. So think about building a custom house. That's a project. On the other hand, running the car factory that churns out thousands of identical cars, that's an ongoing operation. This distinction is really the foundation for everything we're about to talk about.
Now, the classic approach is perfectly captured by something called the waterfall method. It's called that for a reason. It only flows one way, down. It's a super linear process. You have to completely finish the defining phase, every requirement signed off in blood, before you can even think about starting the planning phase. Each step cascades down to the next, and there's no going back up.
So the waterfall method works, as long as absolutely nothing changes. But what happens when the real world decides to show up? This is the fundamental problem that kicked off a complete revolution in how we think about projects.
I love this saying, a project is a problem scheduled for solution. It's great, but it leads to a huge question. What if your problem is something like discovering a new cure, where the solution is totally unknown? Or what if the customer isn't even sure what problem they want you to solve yet? That's the exact moment the perfect plan just shatters into a million pieces.
This matrix lays it all out beautifully. See that top left corner? That's the sweet spot for traditional project management. The goal is clear, the solution is clear, like installing a standard computer network. But look at the other three boxes. That's the land of uncertainty. And that is exactly where traditional plans go to die.
And that brings us to the Agile alternative. Now, Agile wasn't created to get rid of traditional methods. It was designed specifically to thrive in those messy, uncertain environments where the old ways just don't cut it.
Just look at the difference here. It's like night and day. Traditional methods are all about designing everything perfectly up front and then fighting off any changes. Agile completely flips the script. It's built from the ground up to embrace change, using constant customer feedback and empower teams to adapt on the fly.
So what's the secret sauce? It's really these core ideas. Instead of one giant delivery at the very end, you deliver value in small, repeatable cycles. This gives you the chance to experiment, to learn, and even to fail on a small scale. Every single cycle is an opportunity to get smarter and adjust course. It's less about following a rigid blueprint and more about building a learning engine.
Okay, so if Agile is the big picture philosophy, how do you actually do it? Well, that's where Scrum comes in. It's by far the most popular framework in the world for putting those Agile principles into practice.
You can think of Scrum as the operating system for an Agile team. It's not this huge, complicated rulebook. It's actually a pretty lightweight set of roles, events, and rules that helps a team turn those high-level ideas into a concrete process they can follow day in and day out.
First up, we have the product owner. This role is absolutely crucial. They solve that age-old problem of teams building stuff that nobody actually wants. The product owner is the voice of the customer, and their entire job is to make sure the team is always working on the most valuable thing possible.
Next, you've got the development team. The magic words here are cross-functional and self-organizing. This means the team has all the skills it needs right there in the room. Design, coding, testing, you name it. And, critically, no one tells them how to do their job. They own the solution top to bottom.
And finally, there's the Scrum Master. Now listen closely, this is not a project manager. They're what's called a servant leader. Their job isn't to boss the team around, it's to serve the team by clearing roadblocks, coaching them on the process, and basically acting as a shield against outside distractions so they can just focus on building.
So these three roles all work together in a rhythm called a sprint.
It's a short, time-boxed cycle, usually between 1 and 4 weeks long. The team pulls the top priorities from a master list, plans how to build them, and then gets to work. At the end, they have a real, working piece of the product to show for it. Then they review their work, reflect on their process, and do it all over again, getting a little better each time.
A super common tool teams use to stay on track is a burn-down chart. It sounds technical, but it's really just a simple graph that shows how much work is left in the sprint. The goal is to burn down that line to 0. It makes progress visible to everybody, and it's a quick gut check to see if you're on pace to hit your goal.
All right, let's zoom out for a second. Because whether your project is super traditional or fully agile, there's one discipline that you just can't skip: managing risk. And this isn't just about stopping bad things from happening, it's about being ready for anything.
The most important word on this slide is proactive. Good risk management isn't about running around putting out fires. It's about thinking ahead. It's about asking what could go wrong, but also what could go right. It's about looking at both threats and opportunities.
The process itself is elegantly simple. First, you identify the risks. Then, you assess them to figure out which ones matter. You plan your response. And finally, you monitor them. And that last step is key. This isn't a one-and-done thing. You have to keep your eye on the ball because the world is always changing. To assess those risks, teams use a simple tool like this matrix. You just plot how likely a risk is to happen against how bad it would be if it did. It instantly helps you prioritize. Anything that lands in that top right corner, high probability, high impact, that's your red zone. That's what you need to deal with right now. So once you've identified a major threat, you basically have 4 moves you can make. You can try to avoid it entirely by changing your plan. You can transfer it. That's what insurance is for. You can mitigate it, which means taking steps to make it less likely or less painful. Or sometimes, for a small risk, you just accept it and move on. But here's the mindset shift that really matters. Risk isn't just about bad stuff. You have positive risks too, opportunities. And you have a similar set of plays. You can exploit an opportunity, changing your plan to make sure it happens. You can share it with a partner. You can enhance it to make it even bigger. Or you can just accept it and take the win if it comes your way.
So, it all comes down to this. When you're staring into the fog of a new project, into the great unknown, what's your move? Are you going to build a perfect, fragile plan that's basically doomed to fail? Or are you going to choose an adaptive process, one that's designed from the start to learn, to respond, and ultimately to win? That choice really is the heart of modern project management.